right, everybody's taking their seats. Well, this is truly an exciting day. I want to welcome each of you and thank you for joining us on this really important occasion. My name is Alice Hill, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as Senior Director for Resilience Policy at the National Security Council staff here at the White House. So I get asked a lot, just what is the Stop the Bleed initiative? Now, I suspect those of you in the audience know that that's not really that hard to understand. I think it's about helping bystanders take action to save lives. But from where I sit, that really doesn't do this initiative justice. This initiative is at the core of resilience. And with a title like mine, trust me, I spend a lot of time thinking about resilience. And what we're doing is helping individuals take action immediately to save lives. There's really nothing more resilient than that. So it's thrilling to be here. The federal government defines resilience as the ability to prepare for and adapt to changing conditions and withstand and recover rapidly from disruptions. Resilience includes the ability to withstand and recover from deliberate attacks, accidents, or naturally occurring threats or incidents. So you can't read about the natural disasters that occur in this country, read about car accidents, know what's happened to our friends, families, loved ones, without thinking that this is knowledge that they need to know so that they know what to do, as do I, should this befall me. What we're talking about is empowering parents, construction workers, students, teachers, bus drivers, anyone, to take action immediately. Of course, all of us hope that we never have to use this knowledge, but if we do, we know that it could mean the difference between life and death. We are making ourselves and our nation more resilient. So this afternoon, we have the great pleasure of celebrating the efforts of our federal, local, and private sector partners, non-governmental organizations, to build this initiative, the Stop the Bleed initiative, and also to learn ways that we can make sure our knowledge is more broadly shared, and that is our dream, that this is just common knowledge for everyone as to what they should do if they're ever in the situation where they need it. I want to share with you briefly an overview of what will be happening this afternoon. First, you'll hear from leaders from the White House and the federal government. Then you'll learn about the history of the initiative. You'll see and hear a story that exemplifies what this initiative is about. We will officially launch the Stop the Bleed logo and the accompanying website. You'll also have a chance to learn from each other about efforts made by our exemplary leaders, some of which will be speaking, but many of which are in the audience here today, about their efforts to broaden the Stop the Bleed initiative. So to lead off this program, it's my honor and pleasure to introduce my boss, Amy Pope. Amy serves as the Deputy Assistant to the President and Deputy Homeland Security Advisor on the National Security Council staff. In that position, she oversees everything from the Arctic to response to major events, to resilience, to security on our borders. Ms. Pope also serves as the White House Ebola Response Coordinator, where she's responsible for coordinating the President's whole of government response to combating Ebola. She, like me, is a lawyer by training and previously served as the Deputy Chief of Staff and Counselor to the Assistant Attorney General of the Criminal Division in the Department of Justice. She's a magna cum laude graduate of Duke University Law School and a graduate of Haverford College. And she is a tireless champion for this initiative. She has made sure that we got across the finish line, and I think we are on our way to success thanks to her efforts. So thank you, Amy, Please welcome her.
Thank you, Alice. It is a real pleasure to be here, but I am not the one who is responsible for all of us being here today. That credit goes to our own Rick Hunt, who you'll see in the front seats here. There is no one who saw the need and persistently pushed through this initiative, pulling together departments and agencies and private industry and hospitals and doctors. It was a tough road, but we would not be here today without Rick Hunt, so let's all acknowledge Rick. And I can say that because Rick was a key part of our Ebola response efforts, and so the fact that he made it happen while that was all going on is real testament to his dedication and to our commitment here at the White House to this initiative. So welcome to the White House. And welcome to the Bystander Stop the Bleed Forum. Less than 5 minutes. That's how long it can take for a severely injured person to bleed to death. And we all know through our own experiences that 5 minutes is often just not enough time to get a trained professional to the scene. 5 minutes can make the difference between life and death. We are here today because we want to give people more time. We want to make sure more people can survive a severe injury, that more people will have more than 5 minutes, more time to be treated and seen by a trained professional, more time to live. Buying more time is our shared responsibility. It's not just the government's responsibility. We have a role here and we intend to play it. It's not just the private sector's responsibility, not just the nonprofit sector's responsibility, and certainly not the responsibility of each individual citizen alone. But we must work together, as we have seen in countless scenes across the United States, whether it's at a train crash, in response to an active shooter, a bombing, a tornado, a car accident. One bystander can make all the difference. One bystander can protect the nation from harm. One bystander can protect a neighbor from harm or protect a loved one from harm. This is really powerful. Today's forum provides a wonderful opportunity to bring all of you together, leaders from the private sector, from the federal government, to empower bystanders, to empower the everyday citizen to act as immediate responders. Armed with the proper information, with the tools, bystanders can save lives by stopping life-threatening bleeding. Our goal today, through the Stop the Bleed initiative, is to build our nation's resilience by raising public awareness of just basic actions that can stop life-threatening bleeding. So the person sitting next to you, the person standing next to someone who's severely bleeding, is the person who can save that individual from dying, can be the difference between life and death. We know simple actions can save lives. Bystanders don't need a lot of medical training. They can become heroic lifesavers. They can act, and they do act. And it is our job to give them the tools to act, the knowledge, and to empower them to act. Like CPR and the use of automatic defibrillators, bleeding control is another life-saving skill all of us should have. Today is really the culmination of months and months of work of the National Security Council staff bystander work group. That work group engaged with many of you in the room today, stakeholders across large segments of the population, including the physicians and healthcare organizations, emergency management, 911 folks, emergency medical services, the fire service, law enforcement, and the corporate sector. It's very rare we get all those people working together. And this work group brings the knowledge gained by our military medical practitioners back to the homeland and into the hands of ordinary men and women. Many of our stakeholders are here today, and we thank you. We sincerely appreciate your efforts in supporting Stop the Bleed. This forum, we hope, will highlight some exemplary efforts in support of this initiative. Among the goals of today's meeting are to make sure that the general public knows the phrase and the associated logo, Stop the Bleed. The general public has access to life-saving bleeding control kits at home and in public places, and every bleeding control kit provides just-in-time audio and video training. We are really proud today to debut a number of products coming out of this initiative. You'll see a film showing how bystanders can make a profound difference. We will share with you the Stop the Bleed logo, which anchors this initiative. I'm pretty excited about this. I've been walking around going, "Stop the bleed." I invite you all to do the same at some point today. And we will launch a website where the public can go to learn about how to stop the bleed. We are so proud of the efforts of the many organizations and corporations who submitted responses to our request for leadership in support of Stop the Bleed. Thank you for being here. We urge you to take this opportunity to learn from, be inspired by all of the great work we will hear about in this afternoon's session to save lives, to enhance our nation's resiliency. I know that I will. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Amy. Again, thank you for your leadership and making sure that we got here today. I'm very honored to introduce our next guest speaker, Dr. Kevin O'Connor. He is physician to the Vice President. Dr. O'Connor is also Colonel and Master Flight Surgeon for the United States Army. Since 2006, he has served here in the White House as physician, providing contingency planning and medical coverage for the President and the Vice President, quote, anytime, anywhere, end quote. In February 2009, Dr. O'Connor was appointed physician to the Vice President. In this capacity, he provides primary care to the Vice President as well as the second family. He's responsible for the medical planning and emergency actions in support of the Vice President at home. Colonel O'Connor has deployed on numerous combat rotations in support of classified missions in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Bosnia. He is a charter member of the Committee on Tactical Combat Casualty Care, and he has been a true partner in making sure that the Stop the Bleed initiative came to fruition and that we took those lessons, hard-learned lessons, from our battlefield and brought them home so that they could be put to use to save lives right here in the United States. It's truly my honor to introduce Dr. O'Connor. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Hill. I appreciate that. So on behalf of the Vice President and the staff, and certainly on behalf of the medical unit, I see we've got the physician, the president, the director, deputy directors, leaders from the White House Medical Unit. Welcome to the 18 acres, and to this historic forum. Now, the key to any success that we're going to have with this initiative is absolutely reliant upon the assembled leaders that we have today, and so many more that are out there in the community. As Ms. Pope explained, this forum and this launch to Stop the Bleed through the National Security Council Staff Bystander Work Group, led by Dr. Hunt, are all executed in support of President Obama's presidential policy directive on national preparedness. Specifically, this directive states, quote, "Our national preparedness is the shared responsibility of all levels of government, the private and nonprofit sectors, and individual citizens. Everyone can contribute to safeguarding the nation from harm. As such, while this directive is intended to galvanize action by the federal government, it's also aimed at facilitating an integrated, all-of-nation, capabilities-based approach to preparedness." Now, one of the most critical facets to national security, as has been referred to, is resilience. Now, I'm a definition guy. I want to break things down, so let's take a look at the definition of resilience. All right, they tell me it is a noun. Definition one, the ability of a substance or an object to spring back into shape, or elasticity. Definition two, the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. Toughness. I like that one. So as an Army officer and a plank holder on that Committee on Tactical Combat Casualty Care, and there's a number of members, including the Director, Frank Butler, here today, I'm all about resilience. Together with righteousness, resilience is the defining characteristic of any great society. So when Dr. Hunt asked a few of us to contribute to these roundtables that he assembled, and he put together, government, industry, academic, and community leaders, the first thing I had a problem with, as did a few others, was just the term bystander. Again, let's take a look at this word, bystander. Again, a noun. A person who is present at an event or an incident but does not take part. Synonyms: onlooker, looker on, passerby, non-participant, observer, spectator, eyewitness, witness, watcher, gawker. Well, that's not good. So let's talk about the bystander effect. The bystander effect is this phenomena when the presence of others actually discourages an individual from taking action in support of emergency and intervening. The social psychologists, Latané and Darley, popularized the concept after this hideous murder back in 1964. You may have heard of it, Kitty Genovese. Kitty Genovese was murdered in New York City, and she was stabbed to death outside her apartment over the course of 45 minutes. And there were no less than 38 people who witnessed this murder. Now these were good people. These weren't just, okay, well, wish the guy can hurry up. No, these were good, well-intended people, but they didn't lift a finger to intervene. And so Latané and Darley, tried to figure out, well, how could this happen? And so what they came up with is the general concept is that of a diffusion of responsibility. All right. In fact, onlookers are much more likely to take action if they're the only witness there, because then they know they have to do something. Yeah, and the other thing is the social influence. Individuals in a group, they monitor how other people are reacting. And so when you see something and no one's really acting like anything's wrong, you kind of come to the conclusion that nothing's wrong. And so it's a social influence. The net effect is that when there's an emergency, the more bystanders that are present, the less likely any of them are to intervene. They came up with this term called pluralistic ignorance. Pluralistic ignorance is where they assume nothing is wrong just because nobody's acting like something's wrong. So I started thinking about this. We are not a nation of bystanders, all right? We are a nation of by-doers, all right? It's simply not in our DNA to just watch when our families, our friends, our neighbors are in need. Americans stand up. Americans take action. We just have to have a basic concept of what's going on right now, and then we pretty rapidly formulate a means of addressing the problem at hand. So when the Stop the Bleed initiative, what we aim to do is to extinguish any of that pluralistic ignorance, that we might share. We're going to convert the bystanders into by-doers. That's what's happening with this launch. Convert the bystanders to by-doers. The by-doers are what I think of as, in the Hartford consensus, referred to this as America's immediate responders. All right? Keep that term, bring it to heart. All right? Take it to heart, immediate responders. All right, you see, according to Latané and Darley, the bystanders go through a very specific 5-step process. During each one of these phases, the bystander can choose to do nothing. All right, here's the 5 phases. 1, notice the event, or be in your phone and not even see that something's going on. Number 2, realize this is a big deal. Realize that we have an emergency here. Or look around you and, well, they're not excited, so I guess I shouldn't be excited. Number 3, assume responsibility, take charge, own the problem, or assume somebody else will take care of that. Number 4, big one, know what to do, or don't. And then number 5, act. Or don't act because you're worried about danger or liability or how you're going to be judged or embarrassment. Well, with extremely simple education from a wide array of mechanisms, some of which we're going to talk about today, we can address each one of these steps. So let's look at these steps again. Number 1, notice. All right, well, Stop the Bleed, we're going to foster a preparedness model which emphasizes situational awareness. Sound familiar? See something, say something. There's all these other simple things that we emphasize situational awareness. All right, don't get caught. Number 2, realize that it's an emergency. Recognize what is bad bleeding. Recognize what's an arterial bleed, what has to stop, and then appreciate the time-critical nature associated with this treatment and the ultimate outcome. Number 3, assume responsibility. We've done such a good job of kind of getting that out there that, don't touch them, don't touch them, wait for the professionals. Well, we kind of have to unlearn that when it comes to bleeding. We have to give permission for the bystanders to actually take action. With respect to serious bleeding, waiting for the professionals, it just isn't an acceptable option. First responders, the police, fire, EMS, wonderful, valuable people, they may simply be too late. This is not a job for first responders. Serious bleeding is a job for immediate responders, the by-doers. All right, number 4, know what to do. That's a big step, right? Well, through a multitude of communications approaches, we can serve as or enable troubadours of basic, even just-in-time instructions. And then finally, act. Act. Stop the bleed. All right, under act, I would also include the logistics requirements of enabling the immediate response by providing the appropriate equipment, which has to be publicly accessible. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I cannot begin to explain how excited we are about this launch. This is actionable. This is doable. This is simply too simple and too important not to do. I can remember about 20 years ago when I first started, kind of realizing, all right, I got to take this seriously, being an Army doctor here. And I was really starting to prepare. And then through fate and more than likely a general lack of ability to control voluntary impulses, I ended up in a special operations unit. Well, when I was there, I found myself in a position of supporting some pretty rough men in some pretty rough circumstances. And the one overarching principle that went through my head all the time, sometimes when my senses were in complete overload, was a simple statement that I remember Dr. John Holcomb, guy in this room today, trauma surgeon, saying once at a conference that we both had attended. He said in deadpan, which only his friends can really appreciate, keep the blood inside the body, preferably within the vasculature. And in the 20 years that have followed, I have always remembered that that is the key to what we call point of wounding hemorrhage control. Keep the blood inside the body. All right, don't overthink it. Every drop counts. Stated otherwise, stop the bleed. Again, welcome. Thank you all for what you do to support this nation's preparedness.
Thank you, Dr. Connor, for those inspirational comments and that very personal perspective on how we can truly work together to stop the bleed. So next, I'm going to introduce Rick Hunt. I think for many of you in this audience, Rick probably doesn't need an introduction because he has touched so many of you in his tireless efforts to make sure that he brought in the widest possible community to help shape, form, and launch this Stop the Bleed initiative. As you know, he's an emergency room physician, and I think that's something that probably never leaves you. So he has guided us here on the National Security Council staff, helped us with all sorts of biomedical and medical challenges. His title is Director for Medical and Public Health Preparedness and Response here in our Resilience Directorate. But he has really served as the person who has translated medicine for those of us who are not doctors and helped us appreciate what we need to do to make sure that the nation is prepared for all catastrophes. I also know that it's absolutely certain that without Rick's dedication, commitment, and vision, we wouldn't have an initiative here, much less this convening event. So I want to thank him for all he has done. And I ask you to welcome him because he will be leading us through the rest of the show for today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Alice, Amy, great remarks. And Kevin, great remarks. Yeah, keep the blood inside the body. The vision. This wasn't just my vision. This was like long, drawn out, around conference tables, on conference calls, on and on. What can we do in medical preparedness policy and resilience? The vision. Hopefully we got to some elegant simplicity with it. Saving lives and building our individual, our community, and national resilience. Saving lives and building resilience. So, drilling down a little bit further, the general public will know the phrase, stop the bleed, and its associated logo. You gotta anchor it somehow. You have to have an anchor so the general public has some muscle memory when they see it Oh, yeah, it's about like, I'm supposed to do this. The general public will know how to stop life-threatening bleeding. Many in this room have spent countless hours at dedication to courses. That's great. And we need to keep doing those courses, educational pieces. The general public will have access to effective personal bleeding control kits. What's up with that? What is that? So when you go into a grocery store, when you go into a pharmacy, you go down an aisle, and there are first aid kits, and maybe there's also an opportunity to not, no forced kind of thing, but the opportunity to also have a personal bleeding control kit for life-threatening bleeding. Next, the general public will have access to effective public access bleeding control kits. Public access bleeding control kits. We learned a lot over the past few decades around public access defibrillation. And we actually pulled from a lot of those lessons. A lot of us helped us with that. And thought through, gosh, wouldn't it be good to have these public access kits? And could we actually have them next to those defibrillators so essentially it becomes like a life-saving station? One lifts up the other. One lifts up each other's visibility, as it were. Lastly, every bleeding control kit will provide just-in-time audio and visual training, so that the person that didn't have a chance to click on the web course or take a course, go to a course, that person has an opportunity to save a life as well. We established a work group, an interagency work group. Gosh, they worked really hard, especially the team leaders, pulling together what they thought might make sense out of this. Then we brought in multiple stakeholders, multiple roundtables. The first roundtable was one of those, well, I think we ought to bring in large sectors that represent many in the general public, bring them together and see if this makes any sense at all. And they all said, yes, go. Make it simple, don't overthink it, do it. Then we brought in physicians, leaders, physician organizational leaders. We went around the table at the end, and I said, so if I said a statement like there would be broad unanimous support from physician leaders of organizations throughout the nation, would people be in agreement to that? And everyone, yep, let's go. And then we brought together multiple other stakeholders, EMS, fire service, law enforcement, healthcare sector, beyond the physicians' organizations, public health, and they all said, let's do this. And then, more recently, we brought in the corporate sector that has been phenomenal in working with us, thinking through how to make this actually happen. So, we got to start somewhere. And I think a really good anchoring beginning would be a video PSA. And toward that, I'm going to introduce Charlotte to come up, please. Charlotte Porter, Acting Director for Individual and Community Preparedness Division and Director of the Office of, in the Office of the National Advisory Council for the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Charlotte, please.
This is the story of two women and how a perfect stranger stopped to help someone she had never met before. It is a story about how anyone can help, even in the most seemingly basic of ways. In this story, there is no tragedy, no explosion, no derailment. Because while it is true that these things do happen, everyday life happens much more frequently and no less fatally. When we set out to make this film, we looked for an everyday moment, an example of someone who did something they considered to be ordinary, yet which turned out to be quite extraordinary. Wouldn't we all want someone who passes by to stop and take action when it was needed? Here is an example of how an individual cared enough to stop, knew enough to take a few simple actions, and bothered to take a stranger's hand and to tell her everything was going to be okay. It is a powerful reminder that in the rush of our daily lives, we may be confronted with a moment when we can choose to act, and if we do so, may potentially make all the difference for someone in their greatest time of need. This film, entitled A Perfect Stranger, calls on each of us to rethink what it means to be a bystander.
It was a little strange to sit down to someone that you've never met before and decide that you're gonna grab their hand and tell them everything is okay.
I screamed. That's all I remember doing at that moment. I knew I was gonna wreck.
I remember feeling like we had to do something immediately right now.
The day started out like any other day. Wasn't cold, wasn't hot. My friend called me that morning and he said, I'm gonna take out my Harley and you got your new bike. And so let's just go out and have some fun.
All of a sudden, I see the woman on the motorcycle just flying through the air. I just remember saying, stop the car.
I remember getting thrown headfirst over the motorcycle. And I heard them say, don't move, please don't move. Blood was streaming down and it went on into the gutter. There's still the mark of the blood.
And then when we pulled up and saw her, blood was rushing down out of her leg and into the gutter. My husband's cousin took his shirt off and immediately started applying pressure to stop the bleeding.
Camille was holding my hand. I remember that distinctly. She was saying, you're gonna be okay. And to hear those words were so important.
I really feel bystanders have a responsibility to act. Don't be afraid. You're not going to hurt yourself. You're not going to hurt the patient. All you'll do is help, even if it's just a comforting hand.
Doing something that's better than doing nothing. That helps us more than they would ever realize. That can make all the difference between life and death.
If you imagine yourself in a situation where you've been in an accident, you're vulnerable, you're frightened, think about what you would want.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, and thanks to the Federal Emergency Management Agency for pulling that together. It's really well done. Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce the logo. You've seen it already. You got the card already, but let me really introduce the logo. I'd like to introduce Colonel Todd Rasmussen. Dr. Rasmussen is a military vascular and trauma surgeon and professor of surgery at our nation's Uniformed Services University in Bethesda. He has extensive deployed experience as a surgeon and has led multiple clinical and research programs endeavoring to develop new approaches to hemorrhage control and resuscitation. He currently directs the Department of Defense's Combat Casualty Care or Trauma Research Program, headquartered at Fort Detrick, Maryland. As the work group deliberated and it was like, you know, we gotta have a logo, Colonel Rasmussen rose his hand and said, well, we'll do it. I don't think he knew what he was getting himself into, but anyway, I'm really proud to introduce Colonel Todd Rasmussen.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Rick and others. It's a pleasure to represent so many of the military members, past and present, in the audience as the DoD's lead to this initiative. I see a lot of mentors and friends and in the audience, and I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here and represent the DoD in that capacity today and then over the past several months, but maybe even a couple of years. And Rick's right, we didn't really know what we were getting into when we said we would tackle the logo, but I think it was highly appropriate, and it's now certainly very meaningful. In really what was our own Stop the Bleed campaign between the years 2001 and 2014, the DoD provided large epidemiologic data showing the impact of hemorrhage on mortality and then even potentially preventable mortality or potentially survivable injury. And many of you, many in the room are responsible for aspects of that data, communicating it, and then from the DoD standpoint, and then really ingesting it and applying it in the civilian standpoint. The DoD research also showed for the first time really that instituting bleeding control measures, including the use of tourniquets, hemostatic gauzes, gauze products or dressings, and individual first aid kits, along with training, very important training, tactical combat casualty care training, really spearheaded by what we call the TCCC, or the Committee on Tactical Combat Casualty Care, could reduce mortality. It could be effective. Those simple, sensible medical measures immediately applied, not by vascular or trauma surgeons or even medics necessarily, could reduce mortality. It could reduce morbidity and mortality. And it's really in this context that the DoD's clinical experience and research acts as a precursor or a foundation for the Stop the Bleed campaign. In a way, it underpins this campaign. And in addition to the logo and that background, I should say that it has been a pleasure over the last 6 or 12 months to see a couple of investigators at the Uniformed Services University tackle the idea of just-in-time training. And there are now, there has been a sort of a landmark study led by investigators at the Uniformed Services University that show the positive impact of just-in-time training, so that otherwise unknowing individuals can respond with a simple set of instructions to apply manual pressure and then effectively use a tourniquet or hemostatic gauze. And that is an additional, I think, important part that underpins this contribution by the Department of Defense to this initiative. Next slide. So the Stop the Bleed, the goals, we've stated these, but I'll read them again just for emphasis, is an interagency effort to which the DoD has contributed, designed to raise public awareness, build resilience with regards to scenarios of life-threatening bleeding. The initiative seeks to increase, as Rick has said, the public's understanding of its capacity to respond to scenarios involving major injury and render basic but life-saving care and aid. And I think that video aptly described and showed just how simple but life-saving that could really be. The importance of the logo, as Rick referenced, the Stop the Bleed logo will anchor the initiative and the process, and in the process will appear on posters, websites, banners, other ancillary literature products in order to further the understanding of the Stop the Bleed brand. Importantly, it's a DoD logo. It's a logo that the Department of Defense has submitted a service and a trademark for, and it will be available free of royalty purposes for the purposes of information, spreading public awareness, and education. And currently, deliberations are ongoing by experts, certainly more informed than me about trade and certification mark, on just how the mark could be licensed as a certification mark to raise, really for the first time, set a bar for products. If you think about it now, there's really no bar that exists for Stop the Bleed types of tourniquets or gauzes outside of the DoD. So the idea would be in the future the logo could be licensed and set a bar for quality and assured products that are actually useful in scenarios that were described, for example, on the video. So I will stop there. Again, I thank Rick and so many on the committees, our working group co-chairs, and it's very meaningful to be here today to see this come to a conclusion. Certainly a day that I'm not sure we thought we'd see if it weren't for Rick's leadership and the support of those in the White House. So thank you again, and we'll enjoy the afternoon.
So we got a logo, and he's pretty much said, and you too can have the logo. So it's not just ours, it's the nation's logo. So we talked a lot about the logo, Had to get the logo, had a lot of broad input into it. And then we realized, people got to know how to do this, how to stop the bleeding. We got to actually have a website so people can go to it. We got to have those things. So thank you to Dr. Brinsfield and her staff for picking up that one. It was a big one. It was a big one, big lift. And appreciate all that work. So to talk about that a bit, talk about that website, we're going to please ask Ray Moores to come to the stage and go ahead and do that for us. There you are. Okay, good. All right, Ray is branch chief, the acting branch chief for the Medical First Responder Coordination Branch in Workforce Health and Medical Support Division in the Office of Health Affairs for the Department of Homeland Security. Ray, please.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I have the pleasure of introducing the brand new webpage that we put up. I see quite a few familiar faces that have been working in this space, this trying to change culture type space when we deal with active shooter or deal with whatever situation, and we're trying to get in this instance, bystanders to act. I'm fairly new to the initiative. I was brought in a few weeks ago. Alice Hill, Rick Hunt, my boss, Kathy Brinsfield, asked me to lead a small group to put together a web page, and so they presented it to me. They gave, from a little over a year and a half's worth of work, 10 full sentences of just-in-time information to give to a bystander to stop the bleeding. Oh, and by the way, we want to make it simple. We want to make it succinct. And if you can, add some graphics to help them do this. So easy peasy, right? So one slide back, you'll see there was a snapshot of the web page that just went live yesterday. It's www.dhs.gov/stopthebleed. Pretty simple, right? Next slide, please. So on there, you've got, we condensed 10 full sentences into 3 simple steps with some graphics, compress, tourniquet, reevaluate, and you possibly use another tourniquet. This is just a starting point. On the left of this slide is a downloadable graphic that you can print to post in your workplaces, wherever we want to get this message out. This is a culmination. This is just a landing place. This is the Yugo model of getting this word out. There's a lot of work that went into it. The bystander working group, well over a year and a half. It's an initial starting point. As I said, the simple steps, but I think it's an opportunity to help move this forward. There's a lot of resources out there that can take this and can turn it into something that better conveys the message. On the page, there's a few links. Obviously, the FEMA video will be on there by tomorrow morning. We just got the link today. The Army Combat Casualty Care Research, there's a link to that. Hartford Consensus, obviously probably everybody in this room has read about that. American College of Surgeons and their work with promoting tourniquets and that trying to change that, make that culture change, that they are acceptable. The DOD has given us the data to make it to show us that it's a good thing. We want to thank the National Association of EMTs. They've done a lot of work with their bleeding control program. There's a link to that. We're going to keep adding links, and we're going to add continuous partnerships as we go along. Next slide, please. So I'll just leave you real briefly with, if you want more information, I don't even know what this means to ask you to be a partner, but if you want more information, Stop the Bleed at hq.dhs.gov. That's going to be monitored by myself and Jess and Tamara in the audience. So we're starting small, but I think this is a good starting point, and I think we can get the message out there to those that are bystanders to get them to do something. So thank you for being here, and I'll turn it back over to Rick. Thanks.
Thanks, Ray. Kathy, you, your staff, and particularly Ray, men and women on a mission. Impressive, and you got it done. And Ray alluded to it, but it's really important to point out that the work group spent many months working through this, and website receiving it. And as I mentioned, we had a series of roundtables. The most recent one was a corporate roundtable with multiple large and small companies attending that roundtable. And subsequent to that, a lot of great dialogue about the interest and importance of working together toward common messaging. And we welcome that opportunity, and we'll be working together. I think it's extraordinary. I mean, sort of like, TV sets and you go in and do dishwashers and so forth. They all have a little bit something different, but at the end of the day, they all do the same thing. And I think with the messaging, we want that same commonality of simple messaging. So really welcome that opportunity. And we look forward to working with you.